It happens in your town, and it happens in my town. Each day, each week, each month. But before every wedding must come a prelude, a first chapter in these love stories that will carry on through years and years of happiness. Is symbolic of a pledge that will be made this year by nearly 1.5 million couples. The pledge to love and cherish, to honor and obey, the pledge to share a lifetime and build a heritage for new lifetimes to come. The plans for all these marriages are plans to spend money, for every marriage starts a home, and to start that home requires initial spending that's covered by savings, gifts, and carefully budgeted incomes. In 1941, these weddings will release for consumer buying millions of dollars from saving accounts alone, to which may be added that money which is newly diverted from salaries, to make deferred payments on items purchased, to give these new homes comfort and color and cherished self-expression. Although weddings have a tendency to increase in June and October, there are nevertheless thousands of weddings during the other months also, and these tend to steady this market more than we might realize. These things they buy are large unit purchases that run well over $100. Rugs and carpets to soften the floors, chairs and couches and beds and dining room tables and desks, radios and electric refrigerators, automobiles. A ship of matrimony, whether rich or poor, is fitted out with the best gear these young people can afford. For all these tangible evidences of their thrift and their taste are an expression of a vital inward resolution. Our home shall be beautiful because our love is beautiful. And what about sterling silver? What portion of these jealously guarded savings, these carefully budgeted incomes, will go for the purchase of sterling? Here is something that will truly give substance to their adoration. Something of use, something of beauty, and something to outlast everything except the love that brings these young people together. Yes. How about sterling? Back in the 1920s, Bill and Mary, who were planning to get married, were faced, like thousands of other couples of that time, with a budget problem that taxed their ingenuity and their pocketbook with the problem of what to buy and how much to spend. And Bill was wondering just how much he would have to lay on the line for knives and forks and spoons. Although they wanted sterling silver, they thought they couldn't afford it. And like so many other couples of that period, they decided that plated ware would have to do. For 20 years ago, sterling was only for the well-to-do. Bill and Mary, like thousands of other couples, thought that for the time being, their little home must be content with good plated ware. Of course, it wasn't true, for they went out and spent money on items like furniture and rugs that cost even more than sterling. Yes, Bill and Mary didn't know. They were sure that the rich beauty of sterling was beyond their means. Their desire for its traditional, lifelong prestige was surpassed by their desire for other, less permanent things. A heritage was within their grasp, and they passed it by because they didn't know. They were waiting to be told, but there was no one to tell them. The rich people knew about sterling, for it was a tradition in their families. Or they read about it in Vogue, in Harper's Bazaar, and Vanity Fair. Back in the 20s, the dealer in solid silver, and the manufacturer too, relied on just this one market. The upper income group, the people who kept one or more servants, the people with town cars. Those dealers had not yet explored their entire market, nor found a means of developing this market, for nobody had told the Bills and Marys the entire story of sterling in their language. Truly, there was a job of telling, waiting for somebody to do it. In 1938, the International Silver Company decided to tackle this job of telling on the air.
Visit your silverware dealer tomorrow, Monday, and see these lovely international patterns with your own eyes.
The Silver Theater. From the start, it was one of the outstanding success stories of radio, and made this campaign to tell America about sterling silver effective from the very beginning. With a national network that covered the entire country, it took the story to millions of people every week, using famous stars of stage and screen to gather interested listeners from your town and my town and tell them the story of sterling, make them want international sterling, and explain to them how easy it was to buy. And then in 1939, prompted by the suggestions of many dealers, International Sterling decided to expand this job of telling about sterling even further. And so they made a thorough consumer survey, seeking to find the magazine which would not only keep the sterling story in front of the people of high income, but would take the story also to these other people, these people who, like Mary and Bill, were waiting to be told. One publication, Life, emerged above all others. And so in a magazine campaign that was different, International brought the story of sterling to the Smiths and the Browns and the Joneses and the O'Briens. In strong, effective advertising, they began to first make Mr. and Mrs. America have greater desire for sterling's beauty, its lasting usefulness, its tangible expression of prestige and good taste. Second, this advertising made them want international sterling. International because its craftsmen for generations had developed perfection in the exacting skills required to execute these patterns of widespread and lasting appeal. And last of all, and most important, this advertising told these people that they could buy sterling. That sterling silver could be purchased on a budget plan or by one place setting at a time, making its purchase just as easy as the buying of rugs, of furniture, of radios. This advertising reached all over America and quickly captured the imagination of millions of potential buyers, not only in Life magazine, but in Bride's magazine, Town and Country, and Vogue. These ads spread the fame and heightened the prestige of international sterling. By the end of 1940, the International Silver Company had pioneered the advertising of sterling by a radio coverage that was reaching millions of people. A national magazine campaign that made additional millions of impressions on Mr. and Mrs. America every month of the year. This advertising began to affect the sale of all makes of sterling. It opened up a heretofore unexplored market, increasing sales, building up profits, and offering untold opportunities for the years immediately ahead. And what about 1941? Surely now was the time for further action. Advertising action. Action to tell this story in a better way. Action to tell this story in a bigger way. Action to spend more money telling this story. Action to tie this story even closer to the sterling silver dealer. Action to help him get a greater proportion of the consumer dollar. Action to grasp the new enlarged market and sell more sterling silver than has ever been sold before. Action to create a new type of magazine advertisement. Action to bring an even greater audience to that great radio show, the Silver Theater. Action. Magazine ads have been created unlike any that have ever appeared before. bleed pages in a two-color process called duotone in Life magazine every month. Additional bleed pages in Mademoiselle, and black and white pages in Bride's magazine. These advertisements appeal to a woman's sentiment. They show her how sterling silver can add character to her home. And mark this well, for you'll want to repeat it. All of these advertisements, as well as the radio advertising, tell women, with International Sterling, you will always know that your sterling was made by the world's foremost silver house, that your pattern was designed by craftsmen whose predecessors were creating spoons of coined silver 100 years ago, that pieces created by International's present craftsmen are treasured in leading art museums. Yes, and this advertising tells women that International Sterling is easy to buy, and it tells them to go to their jewelers to see it. And this call for action has resulted also in even bigger, better, more effective radio advertising. International, in 1941, again presents the Silver Theater. The prestige of this great radio program continues to grow even greater, so that every week it gathers in new listeners in your town and my town, with the aid of such talent as Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, Ginger Rogers, Betty Davis, Merle Oberon, Jimmy Stewart, and many others. It will bring an ever-growing audience of air listeners to hear the story of International Sterling. This is the type of radio advertising that calls upon millions of people to visit your store and look at your international patterns. There it is. First, a magazine campaign that in 1941 will create 36 million selling messages that reach not only the present market, but that great, new, ever-growing market in the middle income brackets. Second, a radio program with a national coverage and local appeal, which delivers 126 million selling messages throughout the year. Together, a grand total of over 162 million attention-getting selling messages, or 13,500,000 selling messages every month. Sterling Street. 20 years ago, it was just one street in your town and just one street in my town. It was the street where the president of the bank lived. It was the street where the owner of the biggest store walked next door to play cribbage with the most successful doctor. It was a street of quiet dignity and solid finance. That was Sterling Street 20 years ago. But today, Sterling Street is many streets. In your town, it's many streets, and there are many of them in my town, too. It's not only the street where the grass is cut with the gardener. It's also the street where the Joneses play bridge with the Smiths. It's the street where the Browns and the O'Briens pay their rent and raise their kids and live modestly and happily. It's the street to which you and I are going to bring a little more beauty, a little more character, and a little more pride. For some of these people already have begun to buy sterling. For instance, Hank and Alice Brown had wanted sterling for a long time, but thought it too expensive, too far beyond their means. And then one night Alice showed Hank an international ad that had aroused her desire to bring more character into their home with sterling. An ad that made her want an international pattern. An ad that explained about a budget plan that made the purchase of sterling as simple as the purchase of a new rug or couch. And so the next Saturday afternoon, they went down to the jewelry store and asked to be shown some international sterling patterns. Hank was still worried about the cost, but when Alice selected Serenity, and when the salesman explained that this beautiful pattern, with place settings for 6 people, completely encased in the new romance chest, could be delivered that very afternoon for a small initial payment, with the balance worked out on a budget basis that allowed him ample time to handle it, Hank decided that international sterling was a good investment. An investment in prestige and good taste and above all, in pride and happiness for Alice. Does it seem a minor triumph that one family, helped by International, and one dealer moved over to Sterling Street? It would be a small triumph if it stood alone. But it doesn't. It's an example of a new trend. And in 1941, this trend will grow and grow and grow. For International has decided to give sterling silver a future. A frontier has been pushed back. There's a new horizon in front of us. The future will erase and nullify every previous conception of what the sterling business in my town and the sterling business in your town should be. Truly, there's an advantage to be gained from featuring International sterling. International brings you beautiful patterns. To mention just a few, they bring you Serenity, Prelude, Royal Danish, 1810, Enchantress, Minuet, Empress, Continental, all designed with the infinite artistry and beauty that makes your customers want International. We know they want our patterns. We know they can afford them. We are going to move ahead. In 1941, our story will sweep across the country with a greater impact and carrying a greater conviction than ever before. We have a national radio and magazine campaign that will send out millions of desire-creating, selling messages every month. The greatest advertising and selling campaign in the history of sterling silverware. This is national advertising, ready and waiting to become local advertising for your store. The instant you do one simple thing: tie in. Let the people in your town know that you carry this International sterling they've been reading about. Our advertising makes people want International. You tell them where to buy it. Here's how. Display International sterling in your windows and in your store. Feature it in your local newspapers. Distribute International sterling booklets to your customers. When you do this, you become a very part of this greatest of all campaigns to move more people than ever before over to Sterling Street. You can increase your profit. You can bring many potential customers into your store. You can add dollars to your volume. International is laying the foundation of a great future in sterling silver. That future belongs to you. Take it.